Now, if there's one thing I want to make very clear before we start this video is that I firmly believe that all these statements coming from these celebrities on their Twitter accounts are always made by PR teams. I don't believe that this is the actual celebrity behind the statement. And what happened with Neo really kind of drives that home, where PR teams are making statements without the celebrities even knowing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to absolve the celebrities from their responsibilities, because at the end of the day, they probably do think what they say on their Twitter profiles. You know what I mean? Even if the PR teams actually put it out there, these celebrities do in fact think this way, and they're indoctrinated into that way of life. Now, with that being said, we have this article here from Bounding Into Comics talking about good old George Tekai. Now, George Takai's Twitter profile is never short of any kind of insane nonsense, right? George Tekai apparently just recently came out and said that he believes that opposition to child body mutilation, obviously talking about gender affirming care, and I say care very lightly, can lead to World War II internment camps. Yes, this is what George Tekai apparently said on his Twitter profile recently. So let's get into this article, guys, from Bounding Into Comics. But of course, before we do, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. So it says Star Trek actor George Tekai recently shared his belief that opposition to child body mutilation can lead to World War II internment camps. Tekai shared his thoughts as part of his Substack, The Big Picture, which he teased on Twitter. He initially wrote, despite decades of advocacy for the LGBTQ rights, the troubling pattern of scapegoating persists. As someone who experienced forced relocation as a child, the sense of deja vu is deeply unsettling. It's crucial that we learn from history, push for change, and use our votes to secure a better future, he added. Now, George Tekai went from essentially being an actor to being an activist, okay? Like, his entire Twitter profile is literally based in activism. It's all he ever talks about. I don't know if you guys follow George Tekai on Twitter. I don't follow him, but I see his tweets time to time because they usually go fairly viral-ish, to the point where, unfortunately, I do have to see them. And when I look at them, it's always based in activism. His entire thing is about activism. And he's absolutely obsessed with LGBTQ people, especially trans people. He's obsessed. He's really obsessed with anything that they tell him to be obsessed with at the time. You know what I mean? He's not exactly talking about things that he genuinely cares about. I just don't believe it. I don't believe him in the slightest. I think that he is a professional fake person, which most actors are. And he's trying to use his platform to garner sympathy and votes and everything for the Democratic Party, by pushing for whatever they tell him to push for at the time. He's constantly telling people to vote blue no matter who, essentially. Don't think about it. Don't think about the policies. Don't think about anything. Just vote blue. Trust me, guys. It'll work in your favor. So it says, in the body of the article, Tekai recounted his personal experience of being imprisoned in a concentration camp after the Japanese attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor in December 1941. He explained this was done because President Franklin Delano Roosevelt needed to prove he was tough on the Japanese. From there, Tekai described this as scapegoating, which he defines as a convenient target for politicians, a way to whip up hate and bigotry, to win elections, a place to lay blame while none should lay. It meant hate, vilification, injustice, and even the very power of the state turned upon us. Next, he claims this scapegoating is happening again to the wonderful, joyous, yet so often misunderstood and reviled LGBTQ plus community, letters that represent a veritable rainbow of sexual and gender identities. As evidence of his claim, Tekai points to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis armed with dangerous tropes over from 50 years ago, where gay and trans people are labeled as groomers who are a danger to children. Wily politicians such as Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida began a campaign to drive us out, to erase our families and identities in education, in library books, in our own communities. They even targeted retail stores that supported us during our month of Pride. Is George Tekai gay? I don't even know. Is he gay? I guess he must be gay. He keeps saying us, so I guess George Tekai is in fact a homosexual, which does not surprise me in the slightest. But again, he's trying to make this comparison that these two cannot be compared. You know what I'm saying? You have one side of the aisle that this was a time during war. War is never a very pretty thing. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not excusing acts of war. Acts of war are usually very, very vile. But at the end of the day, it's war. It's never going to be pretty. Like the famous saying from Fallout, war never changes. It's exactly what it is. Now, with that being said, you're trying to compare a time of war to a time where LGBTQ people are actively trying to indoctrinate children into making permanent decisions in their lives that they don't have the full scope or mental capacity to understand the actual effects of what they're deciding to do. You're trying to convince little girls to have double mastectomies and telling them that it's perfectly fine and it's cool to do so, when over 90% of them are going to regret it when they get older past the age of 18. But you don't care about those people. As long as you get your cause, as long as the surgery companies get their money and Big Pharma gets their victim for life, as long as all of that happens, you don't actually care what happens to these people. You want to convince them when they're at the most confused time of their life. They're most confused when they're young. Everybody is super confused when they're children. You want to convince them of a permanent decision. You can't reverse it. Don't give me that bullshit about, oh, yeah, you can reverse yourself once you're on hormone blockers. It'll totally go away. Once you stop your puberty from the age of XYZ to 18 or whatever, you could totally reverse it and go back to puberty the moment you stop taking pills. It's totally going to be a thing. Don't convince me of that nonsense, because it's bullshit. And you definitely cannot reverse any kind of permanent surgery like double mastectomies. You cannot reverse that. So you're convincing children to make permanent decisions that they eventually are going to regret when they get older. And that's the problem that a lot of people have. On top of that, you got a lot of weird people trying to actively have conversations about sex with children because they have ulterior motives. This has been proven time and time again from all the teachers and people who have been caught in the LGBTQ community actively doing things with children. It goes to show that it's not so cut and dry like George Tekai is trying to make it seem. It's not just grass is greener on the other side. It's not black and white. There is a lot of gray going on right now within that community that nobody wants to admit to, that everybody's too scared to talk about because they're afraid of being canceled. It's bullshit, man. It really is. And George Tekai, I guess, is gay. We found that out together. He then specifically attempts to defend body mutilation of innocent children in the guise of transgender ideology. More ominously, and in the name of protecting trans kids, which doesn't exist, and in defiance of all expert opinion, politicians at the state level have banned critically necessary trans medical care, leaving desperate patients and families without alternatives. God, I cannot take this right here. Trans medical care. I can't take that saying because it's such bullshit. There is no such thing as critically necessary trans medical care. You want to know why I don't believe it? So here's why I don't believe it. Even if you want to convince me that these kids really need this, right? They need to get their titties chopped off. They need to get their dicks cut off. They need this stuff, right? They need all of this to be okay. You want to convince me that that's the case, right? That this is going to save lives, right? I will never believe it, because the suicide rate in that community continues to be the highest in the entire country, and it also continues to be on the rise. So even though this country has become more inclusive, even though this country has provided, many states have provided ways to chop your titties off, there is still an extremely high level of suicide rate in this community, and it's still going higher and higher. And you're going to have all the wokies come out and try to say, oh, no, it's because of the bigotry that people are killing themselves. No. You told me that if we do this medical procedure, that this is going to save the life of the kid. You told me that. Like, you're trying to convince me of that. So if we chop the titties off, if we chop the dick off, this is going to save the life of the kid, and yet the kid ends up killing themselves anyway, just like they would have had they supposedly not gotten the surgery, because you try to convince me that they're going to kill themselves if they don't have this surgery. Now they have this surgery and they kill themselves anyway. So what are we doing here? There obviously is a disconnect, and it's because this is a mental illness. This is a mental illness that is going unchecked because people don't want to be mean. People want to be lazy. Nobody wants to actually help these people. Nobody actually wants to sit down and go through the process of trying to treat a mental illness. Everybody just wants to throw them off and have society take care of the mental illness. And this is the problem in today's world. And this is why people are so scared to actually have a conversation about this. The mental illness is going unchecked. The problem is being enabled by people like George Tekai. And at the end of the day, they're going to off themselves anyway because they're not getting the actual real help that they need. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.